Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Binary on WDBX 91.1 FM, Carbondale, also WDBX.org. This is Benny, and this week and next week, I believe those are just the 2 weeks, I'm going to be flying without Aaron. Aaron is currently at Burning Man, the Burning Man Festival in Nevada for the next couple weeks, and I will have someone in here next week co-hosting with me. But I have quite a few stories to get through, and fortunately, while Erin's physical presence is currently gone, she is still with us in some capacity, and what I do have here is an interview that she conducted with a really wonderful, blissful person that we met recently named Austin. And the interview here is really talking about a zine that Austin put together that she passed on to Aaron, and that is what I'm going to play for you all now. All right, well, everyone enjoy, and I'll be back after this interview. Well, welcome back. I do hope that you enjoyed that. Please pardon those beeps that took place during that entire interview. I have fixed that on this app that I've been using to do these interviews. And it should be fixed for the next few interviews that are coming up in the coming months at the very least. So anyhow, welcome back to Beyond the Binary, WDBX, 91.1 FM, community radio for Southern Illinois. My name is Benny. My partner Aaron is currently out of town at Burning Man. You can find us online at facebook.com/Beyond the Binary, or you can email us at bthebradio@gmail.com. I have a few news stories today that I want to get to. First of which is very local, and it deals with a news article that came out in the Southern just recently. And the title of the article is SIU Addresses Concerns, Adds First All-Inclusive Changing Room. Now, a few things is, first off, this is really the result of, to my knowledge, of activist students on campus who have really been pushing and asking for inclusive space on campus in the recreation center for students as well as non-students, community members who are part of the recreation center, those folks who use this facility. And what's reported here in this article written by Caleb Hale is the SIUC, or the SIU Student Rec Center, has altered some of its changing areas for the fall semester, addressing concerns officials have been hearing from a variety of people, including transgender patrons. Director Troy Vaughn said Friday the center has added what they call an inclusive changing room near the pool area and converted one of the female restrooms into a unisex facility, and both of these are supposed to be open now. I do have the intent during the next week to go check some of these out specifically. The rec center, established the new changing room and bathroom as a means to help not only trans individuals, but families with children and anyone else who wasn't comfortable in the regular areas. The shower rooms have not been altered, Vaughn said. Now, this is where the peculiar statement comes in, at least specifically for me. It says, quote, Vaughn said he understands there may be some misgivings in the community about accommodating certain lifestyles, but he said the rec center serves a larger population than just the university community. Now, the issue that I have with this is this term lifestyle, which has really important historical significance around LGBTIQA or queer writ large histories, communities, bodies. It is, this term lifestyle has been used to put us in these categories of less than those who are just enacting their lives, for instance, right? And so, at least when I saw this term, I was really taken aback, wondering where in the world this came from. But I ended up writing the author of the newspaper because this term lifestyle, quoting Vaughn, is an indirect quote. And so I don't know if it's Vaughn who's doing it or if it's the author of this news article, Caleb Hale, who you can contact at caleb.hale@thesouthern.com, which I did. And actually this morning I just got an email from Hale that says, after rereading the story, this is the author writing back to me, after rereading the story, I honestly can't remember whether he said it or whether it was a word I applied. I was trying to be as innocuous as possible in my wording. Basically, the gist of the email says is that Caleb does not know whether or not Vaughn actually used the word or if that was a liberty that Caleb had taken in writing the actual article. And whoever it is, the point is that it gets slipped in culturally from those people who do not enact or identify, at least to my knowledge, these queer identities who have had this word lifestyle used against us in ways that seem so incredibly apolitical, but conversely are so painfully political that that's exactly where the problem resides. That somehow being trans is just a lifestyle, that somehow being gay or lesbian or bisexual or intersex, that these are lifestyle choices, right? So we often hear things like, we don't approve of your lifestyle, or I approve of your lifestyle, or you have a questionable lifestyle. What this ends up doing is it ends up normalizing non-transgender, non-queer identities, such that the impetus for what is considered weird is always on those who enact a queer identity. So I guess to some degree, I would stand behind the term use lifestyle, particularly as it applies to for instance, trans bodies, if and only if we could get to a place where we were able to look at normative gender, whatever that is, traditionally understood as non-trans people, if they themselves also enacted a lifestyle. I think that only under those circumstances are we able to consider and think about lifestyle as being something that can be applied across the board. I mean, I feel like that might be the only way that we really can consider it. So long as it's only applied to one group, that's where the problem is going to reside. And throughout this, well, I'll go on. Some of the other quotes, these are now direct quotes from Vaughn. He says the end goal is we get more users in our facilities. We just want people to feel more comfortable. So it goes on from there, but then the last thing that Vaughn is quoted as saying is, it's the right thing to do. Regardless of whom it helps and who it assists, this is something that includes more people. So ultimately, there are some really great changes taking place at the rec center. In my own interactions with Troy Vaughn, as well as those who, well, generally the folks at the rec center, I'm going to go on a limb and say I don't think that Troy Vaughn actually used the word lifestyle. I'm going to believe that this is a liberty taken by the author of The Southern, particularly because the term lifestyle is a very explicit term used within the university campus to say this is a term we do not use. And so it's part of the inherent training for those who are not queer, for those who are identified as allies, to avoid using this term, that it's a problematic word. But nonetheless, I want to put that out there for those who also read this and shared some interesting similar concerns, that I personally believe that this lifestyle term, it was not of the rec center, that this is coming from the reporting out of the Southern specifically. And Caleb, the author, has invited me to engage in some discussion about this term, and I would be happy to do so, and I do intend to do so, hopefully in the coming weeks. So moving on, let's see. Wow, we've got quite a few things here. So we reported last week that AB 1266 out of California had passed, and AB 1266 essentially is legislation that allows, excuse me, students kindergarten through, I believe it's 12th grade. I don't think it's 8th grade, but it's 12th grade, who are, if they identify as trans, or if they're what we consider, this term is interesting, biological sex, whatever that is, this kind of assigned sex, if that does not align with one's gender identity, then the gender identity, actually it's across the board. It's whoever your, or whatever your gender identity is. It's not just for trans people. Specifically, I mean, in terms of theoretically speaking, it's whatever your gender identity is, you're able to use the facilities that kind of facilitate or that that kind of help you realize that gender identity culturally. So if you identify as male or as masculine, as trans masculine, what have you, you're able to now use the male or men's facilities, whether it's a locker room, whether it's a restroom, what have you. And we've also talked about on this show how a lot of the backlash to AB 1266 has really come from this, well, it's all coming from these transphobic, homophobic, conservative folks who are all operating from the assumption that they know what trans is without any sort of inside knowledge from trans people or from what we might call experts that maybe research or talk about trans bodies in general. So it's infuriating to me. And some of the things that I have here, for instance, on Fox's Huckabee, this would be the fella who ran for president. So just remember this. So I'm going to go through some of these kind of pushbacks here. Mike Huckabee had a guest on from Capital Resource Institute. Her name is Karen England. And basically they were both working to kind of peddle against, they were basically using myths about trans bodies. But specifically myths around the fragile female who always needs protection in order to make their case. All of this conservative kind of backlash has come to trans women in women's restrooms and locker rooms, and the assumption that these trans women are there to simply prey on the cisgender women that are in these rooms. And so we have these old notions, and you know this because typically when these conservative talkers talk about these trans women in these locker rooms, they use male pronouns. They literally refuse to acknowledge that these are women, that these are trans women that are experiencing their lives as women, and that as a result they are using these facilities. Instead they say things like, oh, and now these boys who think they're girls are going into these girls' restrooms, and now they're just going to hurt our girls. And so it's infuriating hearing this type of language. But this is what Karen England had said on Huckabee's show. This is very extreme, very radical, that they are going to let boys wake up one day, as if one day you just wake up and magically there it is. But perhaps it is for some folks. I don't know why that would even be an issue nonetheless. I mean, if you realize it, you realize it. That's part of, I think, gender experience, that it's a movement. But anyways, England says it's radical that they, California, are going to let boys wake up one day, decide that they're girls, and let them have access to our restrooms and our locker rooms and all our public schools in California. This is just absolutely ridiculous. And interestingly, what's not in this discussion, it's the complete erasure and absence of trans masculine experiences and trans men who are accessing men's facilities. Apparently that's not an issue here. What is an issue is protecting, so it's clearly an appeal to, it's a fear appeal, right? Like all of these conservative myths are around fear appeals that are really trying to say we need to save the girls, save the women, save the girls, save the women over and over again. And that men are predators, men are predators, men are predators. And yes, statistically this is the case, but when we talk about trans bodies, this is not the same thing. When we talked about TERF and the radical feminists who are transphobic, who have a really hard time, not a hard time, they just downright refuse to acknowledge and to accept trans bodies, particularly trans women. They're operating on the same level. There's quite literally a fascinating intersection between radical feminists and hardcore conservative Christians, talkers, and pundits who use the same type of rhetoric to position, to harm trans women and to not allow them into the facilities that they might need. And I find it interesting that this, well, I don't exactly know how to frame this here, but well, here, I'm actually going to go to one of our clips here. Well, I have a clip real quickly. On another space, the Media Research Center has a videographer named Dan Joseph, who's a conservative blogger. And what he does is he decides to go to a, quote, he goes to a, he says in this larger video on his website that he's going to go to a university campus, where they're liberal. And so he ends up going to a relatively conservative university, and starts interviewing these folks about what they would do, and he really eggs them on. He asks questions like, "What would you do if they let a boy who's dressed as a girl into your locker room? How would you feel about that?" So he's really egging on the response as well. But here's an interesting clip. The clip it's only 45 seconds or so long, and it starts off with this guy Dan Joseph talking to a young man at the college. And so this young man responds, and then the immediate next clip that I have is Dan Joseph, get this, decides he is going to be a trans woman, and by that we do mean all of the stereotypes that we can possibly imagine. And so the image that you're not going to see, of course, is of Dan dressed in a tank top and shorts and has his hand on his hips and starts lisping, because apparently when we conflate trans women, then also we have the stereotype of the gay man, which is clearly all that this person has access to. And so he results to a stereotype of a gay man to make sense of trans women, and then starts asking women as they're going into the locker room, can I come in with you and change? Like, it's all fear tactics. So I'm going to go ahead and play this for you all. Please do enjoy this.
High school kids get away with a lot of bad stuff that a lot of kids nowadays will probably take advantage of rules.
Well, right, you mean like a guy who just wants to see some naked chicks.
Exactly.
Going, oh, I'm transgendered, you know, I need to go to the girls' locker room.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what I would do.
Excuse me. Are you going into the locker room? My name's Dan. I'm a transgender. So that means I have, you know, the man parts, but inside I feel more like a woman. I was just wondering, is it okay if I go in there with you in there and change and shower and stuff? Because I don't, you know, I don't really feel like comfortable in the men's area. You know, it's just weird. Was that okay with you? I thank you so much. That really means a lot to me. Okay, well, I'm just nervous, you know. Okay, thank you so much.
I mean, really? Oh, wow. I mean, this is the traction behind conservative groups right now who are across the board anti-trans, refuse to acknowledge that that's really what it's from, and really operating from complete and utter spaces of ignorance across the board. Watching this, it's not that it's heartbreaking. It's just it's infuriating. It gets me on edge. It makes me angry. It gets me frustrated, and it's something that I'm really trying to wrap my head around, as well as to keep myself kind of grounded as these talking points continue to unveil. And of course, this is a result of a recent piece of legislation that passed, and over time we will see that in fact this is. All of these concerns are completely unfounded. I mean, it's going to take time. This is what happens, particularly when it comes to queers in the limelight, whatever that might look like. So, but anyhow, we're at the halfway mark, and I'm going to go ahead and take a brief break here and play for you a song. Excuse me. And this song is by Joshua Clip called Life. And I will be right back. I'll see you all, and, well, I guess I won't see you at all, but I will talk to you in just a moment. Welcome back to Beyond the Binary. I'm Benny. Here I am. All right. You can find us at facebook.com/Beyond the Binary. Do tell your friends and family and everyone else out there. All right. Moving forward here. Through some of our other stories, the next one comes from New Jersey, and this one is about Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, who I increasingly am convinced is going to be the front runner for the GOP party, because he's certainly making certain strides to really show what the GOP in general, or the Republican Party, maybe can start making in terms of its changes. No matter wherever you stand in terms of Chris Christie, I think that he certainly has a good chance at running for the presidency in 2016. But this is one of those, I think, large steps. I think that in terms of political posturing, as a devout Catholic man, as he says himself or positions himself to be, as a Republican who opposes marriage equality, has done so in the past. This current step is really large in terms of saying, hey, in some ways, I feel like it's him saying, hey, Republican Party, we need to start making certain stances like this. And what he does is he signs a ban on conversion therapy, making New Jersey the second state in the United States of America to ban the practice of conversion therapy in the state, California being the first. So, and this just recently happened. That he's banning conversion therapy. And he says here that he believes people are born gay and that homosexuality is not a sin. that view is, and then the article then goes on that says the view is inconsistent with his Catholic faith, which teaches that homosexual acts are sins. So this is an interesting thing, and one of the questions might be, well, why am I talking about Chris Christie and conversion therapy? Well, in my own research, and conversion therapy has certainly been an important part, or an important an important cornerstone of my own research, my own coming to understanding academia, understanding myself, and what have you. And part of conversion therapy as well, it's about converting people to straight. That conservative kind of belief is motivating the exact same little, how can we say, the exact same logics are used to position trans people in these same spaces, because there's a conflation between being trans and being LGBT identified that really motivates these conversion processes. So to ban conversion therapy is ultimately what I'm saying, is also to ban or to stop the conversion of trans people into cis people, because it's very much a binary logic that kind of guides a lot of these conversion camps. You're either gay or you're straight, and one of those is bad, right? That apparently being gay is bad. Just like for trans people who would go to these conversion spaces, they're not there necessarily to become straight, although they might, because some trans people are gay, some are not. Ultimately, it's that your gender is, quote, wrong, and so it's the same guiding logics there. So to ban conversion therapy for queer people is also to ban it for the conversion of trans people in these similar spaces. And that's very important to note. And along similar lines, and by similar lines, I am talking here now about kind of a Christian-informed homophobia and / transphobia, is a historic federal ruling that recently happened here about Scott Lively. And Scott Lively, who, if you do not know, is a notorious person who is the founder of, Abiding Truth Ministries, and has made a career smearing gay people and queers across the board. And I think here of my colleague Greg, who has been working with some of the stuff that really kind of comes from Scott Lively's global footprint around creating legislation in various spaces. So essentially, here I'll start at the top of this article here. A federal U.S. judge has ruled a persecution of LGBT people as a crime against humanity, which is, there's all sorts of tones here. There's always a plus and a negative here, right? That the plus is like, wow, this is big time acknowledgement. It's also saying that when we talk about freedom of speech, for instance, that the impact of that freedom of speech, yes, you have freedom of speech, but the impact is also such that you have to be held responsible for whatever that impact is going to be. And so this is where the precedent for me is really setting in. It makes me think of the numbers of queer or trans youth who experience suicidal thoughts, who go through bouts of internalized homophobia, internalized transphobia, tons of just self-hate, trying to pull yourself out of these spaces that you're put into. That now we kind of have a precedent saying that religious leaders who are espousing this, I'm thinking of Pat Robertson, I'm thinking of even pundits like Bill O'Reilly, Rush Limbaugh, Scott Lively here, that they have to now be held responsible for the ways in which their language is creating an atmosphere of hate. Apparently it's a crime against humanity. And this is where the critical side of me goes, well, what does it mean, crime against humanity? I mean, that's cool, but at the same time it makes me want to question also what the larger global impact in terms of outsourcing American policy can be. So, specific to Scott Lively here, Scott Lively is associated with the Ugandan government's Kill the Gays bill. So this has gotten press over the last, I believe it's been a couple years now, maybe more. But Scott Lively is the one who helped draft and really bring to fruition the Kill the Gays bill in Uganda. And more recently, what's been getting some headway here is back in 2007, Scott Lively toured 50 cities in Russia where he's accused of recommending a ban on gay propaganda. And so arguably, and this might come out in further proceedings now, that Scott Lively is largely also responsible for what's taking place in Russia in terms of what has been passed of legislation. And so interestingly, when we talk about globalization or how policies, particularly American religious political policies, get kind of outsourced in various spaces around the globe, in one way we want to say, or at least I want to say, it's interesting that this policy, these anti-gay propaganda policies in Russia come from America, but also that the fix is now coming from America, which means that it becomes an American problem that's fixed by American hands, which has very little to do with local governments, be it Uganda, be it Russia, and I really want to attend kind of to how these processes are functioning, this over-reliance on American politics and American religious beliefs in order to keep the world going. There's a lot of colonial strands that continue to kind of weave its way through everyday, mundane, normal kind of decision-making practices, and how, ultimately that while this is a historic, interesting ruling, I also want to attend to the fact that it's also deeply problematic at the same time. And so I feel myself torn on it, but it's something that's very interesting. So to rehash there, first off, Chris Christie in New Jersey bans effectively gay conversion therapy, which also affects trans people in New Jersey. And Scott Lively is being tried for crimes against humanity for his anti-gay sentiments. He also believes that he wrote, I believe the book is called The Pink Swastika, I believe is what it was called. Yes, he co-authored The Pink Swastika, which suggests that, quote, homosexuals were the truth inventors of Nazism and the guiding force behind many Nazi atrocities, and that the rainbow flag, get this, is a sign of the end times. So get out those rainbow flags, everybody. Apparently it's end times. All right. Well, keeping a kind of global look on things here, in Germany, Deutschland, as of November of this year, 2013, Germany will be the first country in Europe to offer a third gender distinction on its birth certificates, which is a fascinating leap and jump in these Western spaces for these spaces that also need and demand kind of bureaucratic systems to designate different sex and gender identities of folks. So the new gender law stipulates that children who are born of intermediate gender no longer have to be categorized as male or female. Instead, parents can choose to leave the space blank on their child's birth certificate, which in the long term, particularly those who choose to remain blank, right, it's going to pose bureaucratic problems later down the line, whether it's entrance into institutions, whether it's travel, whether it's going to other, in terms of travel specifically, when you go to other countries that demand that you need an either-or gender designation. And so while this is great for Germany, there's also a kind of larger necessary component that we need to keep, or that we need to attend to. It's very important that we do so. The blank line, or one of the suggestions I should say, instead of it being left blank so that something is written there for things like passports or what have you, is that there's a group that's suggesting that Germany use an X to designate third gender identities on its passport. So nonetheless, whatever comes out of this, what this does legislatively is it actually legitimizes and creates a space for a third gender, whatever that might look like on paper later down the line. The point is that legislatively we now have a shift in a European country here. But of course, Germany is not the only country that has been navigating these legal implications. Particularly Nepal, which was just earlier this year. Nepal began issuing third gender citizenship certificates. And in Sweden has instituted a vernacular solution to the gender dichotomy. So in Sweden, these kind of the gender terms that are used, the masculine is han, and the feminine is, or han, I'm not sure how the pronunciation works, but han, and then the feminine is han. And then what they have now is a third gender option, which is hen. So it's han, han, and hen as kind of the three kind of gender designations in their own vernacular in Sweden that allows for bureaucratic institutional kind of documentation that's been taking place, at least there. So another story that I have here, it's not really a story so much as just some thoughts here. there's a website called VK. It's a Russian social networking site. There is a group called Straights for Equality, which is a group advocating for LGBT rights, whether those folks are queer themselves or they're straight, and that's the only way that you can function in Russia right now. They posted a video of a trans woman being attacked by 5 men. And the video is completely and absolutely disheartening, difficult to watch, difficult to stomach. And again, I'm not really reporting something so much as just saying that as these videos keep coming out, we're starting to really see, with this, particularly with this trans woman, the intersections and why the LGBTIQA train, the alphabet soup train, is so long, is that these intersections of gender expression and sexual identity, how they intersect with one another, is that those on the outside, as well as the inside, tend not to see the nuance of each of our experiences, and why coalitionally we are all working together. That this is not just in Russia an anti-gay propaganda bill, but also the ways that this anti-gay propaganda functions against all kinds of bodies that do not enact their gender properly and can be assumed to be enacting or propagating some sort of gay propaganda, as the legislation in Russia is functioning here. And this is important to recognize, particularly when we talk about LGBT as an umbrella kind of understanding. There are nuanced experiences, but there's also very important ways that all of our identities and experiences intersect politically, and that can allow for a coalitional politic to really emerge. Now I move on to another story here about B. Scott, and B. Scott is a phenomenal personality out in the world, and has recently filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against BET, the television network. And essentially, this particular individual, B. Scott, who is trans feminine identified more recently, was identified as a gay male before, was at the 2013 BET Awards, and during the, I guess, from what I understand, before the actual live airing, B. Scott had no issues, was not told that that their clothing or that their appearance was problematic or that anyone from BET had issue. In fact, they note that the BET producers, artists, the whole production team itself were actually complimenting B. Scott on their clothing, on their appearance. And midway through this through the live airing, was basically just taken off the air and publicly ridiculed. And by public, I mean we don't have access to what happened behind stage. What we do have access to is B. Scott looking one way, disappearing, and then coming back looking a different way. And by different way, I do mean in male clothing, because they were told that they have to come out in... well, this is actually what B. Scott's quote is. "I was snatched, literally yanked off stage, dragged back behind the stage, and was told that my outfit was unacceptable from head to toe. They said I needed to pull my hair back, I needed to remove my makeup, that I needed to change into solely men's clothing and take off my heels and put on flats. I couldn't even wear a boot." And rightly, the author of this story from Edge, New York, also says that the attire originally chosen, this is B. Scott's, was a sleeveless blue tunic, black pants and heel, was prudish compared to the couture larger-than-life rappers Lil Kim and Nicki Minaj, and what they have made as their own red carpet trademarks. And so this kind of comparison that's being made between trans and cisgender women, and how they publicly kind of create a persona, and how there's different levels of kind of expectation thrust on these bodies. And we kind of talked a little bit about this, I believe, every week in some way. Aaron and I kind of talk about this, that trans women are put on a different kind of expected level in order to enact a proper feminine kind of persona. And if they don't do it well enough, then that's where the policing comes in. And this is where even the interview this morning, when we talked, when Austin and Aaron talked about kind of the politics of detransition as well as passing, part of I think part of the resistance to the detransition discussion is that it really challenges those who have, quote, made it. And by made it, I don't mean you're there so much as maybe you more easily pass and you don't have to worry as often. I'm not saying it's gone completely, but maybe you don't have to worry as often about being clocked or being caught, being figured out, right? That maybe that you are trans, or that maybe that your gender is a little bit off. And I think that Austin in the interview brings up a really good point, that it's important that we start having these discussions about detransition, and more importantly, and this is what Aaron then brings up, and Aaron and I really share this kind of understanding that the term detransition is deeply problematic, and while it's kind of the prevailing language, it's deeply problematic because it still assumes a binary experience in gender. That sometimes being trans, being cisgender, being some sort of gender expression means that there's various points where things shift and change for each of us. And so sometimes that transition might include drastic shifts in clothing. Maybe it includes hormone replacement therapy. Maybe it includes plastic surgery. Maybe it includes none of these things. Maybe it includes changing these things and maybe lowering your dose of hormones. Maybe it means getting off hormones for a few months. Maybe it means all kinds of things. And so detransition itself is problematic because it dismisses the fact that the gender is so incredibly fluid. And I think B. Scott is one of these folks, and the expectations put on her body is that she is basically told, do not look this way because you are not this way. You must look like a boy because this is how we want to read you all of a sudden, despite her past on BET and all of her fabulousness. So there's that story going on. And I have one last kind of big story that I want to talk about here, and it deals with Leslie Feinberg, transgender warrior Leslie Feinberg, one of my personal heroes out in the world. Recently, Leslie Feinberg has been battling for some time now a tick-borne disease, and was put into hospice care back in spring of this year, and has survived hospice care, has come out on the other end, and as of right now, it has health that's greatly improving, and it's looking really positive. And Leslie put out a statement that I'm going to post on our Facebook, facebook.com/Beyond the Binary page for you all to look at. But essentially, right now, Leslie's working on a anniversary edition of Stone Butch Blues, which is going to be, I believe, available online for download for people. And the front and back matter for the anniversary edition of Stone Butch Blues is now done, as well as a slideshow honoring C.C. McDonald, which is called "This Is What Solidarity Looks Like." And from there, Leslie kind of outlines some of the issues around medical misdiagnosis and really arguing for universal health care access for all bodies. So I'm going to post that on the website. But anyhow, here we are, or here I am, I should say, because Aaron's out of town for the next few weeks at the end of the show. And I'm going to leave you all, as I kind of transition from DJ to DJ here, a song by Rika Aoki de la Cruz called... I tell myself it's me is what it's called. So otherwise, I will see you all next week. Have a great week. Make sure to check us out at facebook.com/Beyond the Binary. You can email us at bthebradio@gmail.com. See you all later. Bye-bye.